And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to A Bookish Moment. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am JC Kenny, celebrating the fact that we are 40% through the work week. So, Sarah, I think it's time to get bookish.
Yes, and this is actually our final bookish moment of the season.
It is.
It's hard to believe that we have had such an incredible year talking with so many incredible authors, and we are so excited today to have another one join our ranks. And today's episode is even more special because we have a new genre to add to our ranks. Nicole M. Wolverton is here to chat about her upcoming YA horror novel, which is called A Misfortune of Lake Monsters. And oh my goodness, guys, I cannot wait to talk about it. So exciting. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited that I get to end your season.
It's like, we're so excited that you're here because we've heard that you have, you've watched our show and so you get to like be a part of, what we're doing here. And it's really exciting. We're thrilled to have you on. And again, congratulations on the upcoming release. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, how you got into writing and how how this book came about.
All right. So I am mostly a writer of horror, also a writer of thrillers for adults and young adults. I have 2 novels, one of which was published about a decade ago. That's The Trajectory of Dreams, which was an adult psychological thriller. And my upcoming novel, which is 7 days away, A Misfortune of Lake Monsters. I also have 50 give or take short stories, essays, and creative nonfiction published.
Wow.
And I live in the Philadelphia area. And
50.
as for how I sort of got to be a writer, I have always been what I now call a fear enthusiast, which is, I guess, is a weird thing to say. I was doomed from a super early age to go in that direction. My grandmother was fond of reading me the original Grimm's fairy tales. We watched a lot of Alfred Hitchcock in her house. My father, who was a terrible parent as far as, parental responsibility goes, took me when I was 5 to see The Exorcist, which is why I say that about him. And all of that influenced me in so many ways, from having an unusual imaginary friend to being fascinated by ghost stories. And I don't think anyone was surprised when I picked up an early Stephen King reading habit. Or when I got obsessed with slasher films, which, really sort of threw me in the direction of writing horror, which I had always done for myself as an adult, but I didn't get serious about publication until I was in my mid-30s.
I am just so many things to dissect there. First of all, folks, JC is, I think, in the middle of a thunderstorm right now, which really adds to the mystery of what we've got going on here. So let's
very atmospheric.
Exactly. So let's hope that his internet will come back and he'll be able to pop in. Nicole, a fear enthusiast. I love that. I love that descriptor because the way that, I am always been a fan of scary movies. I love them. And reading A Misfortune of Lake Monsters was talk about atmospheric, because you're just we're brought into such a, right off of page 1, such an intriguing tale of Lemon's story and this world that she inhabits. And it's once I think our audience members begin to hear the concept of this novel, they're just going to be like, wow, how did you think of this? But before we kind of dive into the how, can you tell us a little bit about Lemon's story and how and the world of Old Lucy?
All right. So I think the most important thing to know about A Misfortune of Lake Monsters and Old Lucy is that Old Lucy, the lake monster of Lake Lokakoma, is fake and always has been. And it's Lemon's family who has been impersonating this monster for generations. And the idea is not that they're doing it to be mean. They're just doing it to keep tourist money coming into town and keeping their town alive. The story's set in rural Pennsylvania, and I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and a lot of the towns there are economically depressed. They're getting smaller by the year. But Devil's Elbow, where Lemon and Old Lucy live, is really just doing great because they have all these tourists coming in to see the monster, just to sort of be in that atmosphere. And so Lemon, of course, doesn't really want to be the monster impersonator, but she's been selected by her family to take over. She is graduating high school. She wants to leave and go to college, become a veterinarian, but that is all put on the back burner when she's selected. However, the real kicker here is she discovers that there is an actual real monster in the lake who is intent on basically destroying the town and eating everyone who comes near the lake. And it's a secret, of course, that she and her family have been impersonating Old Lucy. But when she discovers that the lake monster is real and no one in her family believes her, who is she going to tell to sort of save the town but her best friends? And that is how the story really gets going.
I love her best friends, by the way.
Before you get too far, yes, I have to ask, and I apologize for dipping out there for a minute or so. We've got some serious weather. Even being wired into the hardwire stuff, I lost power. So anyway, I'm back. So Nicole, this is just such a delightful setup. I do have to ask, a misfortune of lake monsters. Misfortune, that's the scientific name for the group of lake monsters, kind of like a murder of crows or,
right,
that kind of thing, right?
Yes, of course. So obviously it's not official, not like the murder of crows. However, it is a line in the book that one of the characters comes up with when he's trying to talk about what you would call a group of lake monsters. Okay. Because, of course, in this book, there's one too many lake monsters.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So kudos for just like the coolest, like, I was blown away by the concept of this. And the fact that you have Lemon, who she's just been guilted into this role as her family, as the successor within her family. And, she has this like real, this envy of her two friends, Darren and Troy, about the fact that, they get to leave town and that's all that she's wanted. But she knows that she's trapped here, that she has to pretend to be this monster that the whole town depends on. And the shops that you talk about that all have some tie into Old Lucy, the candy shop, the laundromat, like it was just like, it must have been so fun coming up with this town and all of the kind of, the marketing that goes into Old Lucy. And I was just thinking, JC and I, we're cozy mystery writers, but we deal with that town creation and making things like having a, if the town kind of has a gimmick going on, like we're like totally leaning into that in our own town creation. So I'm wondering if you can share, Nicole, a little bit about like the building of Devil's Elbow and maybe like how Devil's Elbow got its name, and just kind of some of the community members in the community areas that tourists might visit while they're on the hunt for Old Lucy.
Absolutely. So first, I'll say that I got the idea for tying a town around this tourism sort of thing, really from seeing other towns that have cryptids. I went to Loch Ness in Scotland to do a little bit of research for this book. And if you've ever been to the Loch Ness area, you know that there's an awful lot of Loch Ness monster stuff around. I don't think it's quite as cheesy, let's say, as some of the American tie-ins. But if you go to Loch Ness, there's a little center where they have the history of Loch Ness, the history of the Loch Ness Monster. This year has been a particularly interesting year in the search for Nessie because they have had these interesting sort of anniversary tie-ins to like really push to find the monster. There have been new sightings, new recordings, all sorts of things that are really fun to pay attention to when you're sort of outside. If you're in Loch Ness, however, like in the area, it's probably got to be pretty annoying as somebody who lives there to deal with all these tourists. I've also done some visiting domestically. Here in Pennsylvania, we have Raystown Ray from Raystown Lake, which is Huntington, Pennsylvania. There's Champ, of course. I believe he's out Midwest somewhere. There's the Ohio Frogman.
Oh my gosh.
The Loveland Frogman. All sorts of things. If you go to somewhere where there is a known cryptid element, there's going to be tourism connected to it. And you always see all these shops that are devoted to that kind of tourism. And so everywhere I went, I was taking little notes. There's a piece in my book where there is a candy shop that sells old Lucy poop.
Yes.
And that was taken directly from another cryptid-related candy store because it was so ridiculous. How could I not? My favorite of the stores, by the way, is the ice cream shop because I got to make up ice cream flavors. And I so wish that I had like a bigger publicity team because I totally would have gotten in touch with Ben and Jerry's and tried to like team up with them to like have my own flavor. It would have been awesome.
The ice cream shop was and figuring out like the different like the play on words, like the ice cream for Lucide and salt or like there was just like
the seaweed and salt one.
Yes. And I was just like, there's so many like cool things that you must have had fun like building that world. And it was I just thought like there, you know, even though you are writing like a horror that is filled with suspense and filled with like some very scary elements that this poor girl is dealing with, there was just like this like warmth within the world that I think made Lemon, but it also made the town, you know, something that you were rooting for. So I really just loved the setting and the world of Devil's Elbow coming to life. I do have to like, do you have like a favorite like cryptid lore that you like that maybe hadn't been on your radar before researching this book?
So I mentioned the Loveland Frogman. He's from Ohio. One of my absolute favorites. I had no idea who that was before I started sort of looking into cryptids. However, it's so ridiculous. There is allegedly a man-sized frog who hangs out under bridges in Loveland, Ohio.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And he has a sparkly wand. That's all he does.
As full-size frogs would, you know, I mean, who are we to judge, right?
Right. I mean, what's funny about cryptids is when you do the research on them, there are very few that have a body count attached to them, which always kind of makes me laugh because you're like, oh, well, this is supposed to be a scary monster. You know, close to Philadelphia, you have the Jersey Devil. And you really don't hear about a lot of deaths associated with the Jersey Devil. In a lot of ways, they're supposed to be fun. Another one I really, really love is Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack is an English cryptid. He's really just a white guy who can jump really high. And he has like knives and he scratches at people when they open their door.
Oh my goodness.
It's kind of random. Like, I don't think of him as a real cryptid, but apparently he's in the lore. I actually just saw a television show. I think it's called Sanctuary, which was like a decade ago. But they used Spring-Heeled Jack as a character.
Why do I think I may have seen that.
You probably did. It's such a great show. And that was a great episode.
Oh my goodness. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and so Nicole, I guess one of the things I just kind of want to clarify as I had to go, and I'm now on my phone, so I'm on to plan C with the weather. Anyway, so I apologize to everybody, and I apologize to you, Nicole, for all of the tech issues that I'm having. But one of the things I just kind of want to clarify, as excited as Sarah and I are about talking to you about the book, and we're talking about a lot of kind of lighthearted moments, this is a horror book.
Yes.
Horror story. So, I think, could you talk a little bit about that? Because as much as I love Scooby-Doo, this ain't it.
So I consider A Misfortune of Lake Monster, it's obviously horror, but I consider a cozy horror romance story with a mystery and a little bit of a sci-fi twist.
Okay.
And what I always tell people when they're like, well, I don't really read horror, I'm like, well, you come for the screaming and dismemberment and you stay for the sweet romance. It's fun horror. And I'm a big believer in horror that should be fun, because if you are screaming and you're scared, there has to be a little bit of humor in there to like make it go down.
As someone who I've consumed a lot of scary movies in my lifetime, and the best ones are always the ones that have that humor or that lighthearted element that makes them lovable in a way.
Absolutely.
So how did you've talked about your childhood and your interest in kind of all of these different elements growing up. So how did this idea of a family-run monster business come to mind when you were first creating this story?
So the origins go back pretty far. Like when I was a little kid doing dishes at my childhood home, looking at a lake in back of my house out the window. And that was just like the start of, gee, I bet there's a lake monster in there. But when it comes to sort of like the family business, this is going back some time, but I was sitting in my office and I have a poster that I love on the wall of my office called Lake Monsters of America. And it's just a map and it shows where all the lake monsters are. Oh, wow. And, the longer you stare at something, the weirder the ideas you get. And, I sat down, I'm like, oh, what a good idea it would be to have this lake monster. And, it's actually fake. And then you're like, well, how can I make that work for a town? And really, it's the issue of tourism. And having grown up in rural Pennsylvania and seeing like a lot of towns dying out, you really want to root for a town to really do well. And an example of something or a town that does really well is, God, I'm losing the name of it now. Never mind, I lost it. It's a symptom of age. But it's a town in the Poconos that is named after an Olympic runner, is all I can think of. But anyway, it's doing really well, despite all the little towns around it kind of not doing so well. And a lot of it has to do with the tourism that they bring in, which, by the way, there is a paranormal element of. So you can use just about anything to make yourself a tourist destination. And so this is kind of random. I was reading a review of a Misfortune of Lake Monsters the other day, and someone was responding to it. And I was reading, of course, you're not supposed to interact with these things, but I at least read them. And the woman who was responding said, this is an absurd idea, but it sounds fun. And that's sort of my whole take on horror. I want to write the absurd plot and make it fun and still scary.
Well, I mean, hats off to you, because you did like that in spades with this. And I mean, the Lemon's story itself, I think, is so relatable, especially for those of us who grew up in small towns that wanted to kind of achieve something more. So it's not, we're very much anchored in reality in a way that makes her very, she's very relatable, very identifiable. But then you also have the perspective of Troy. And we haven't really talked a lot about Troy and his role in Lemon's life. Any chance, and especially since you kind of teased, a horror with a little cozy romance in it, any chance you want to just talk a little bit about Troy and like his place in Devil's Elbow?
Absolutely. So Troy is the son of the sheriff in Devil's Elbow. And when you have someone like a sheriff where you're really rooted in sort of the community, it can be hard to understand your place in a town beyond thinking, well, I'm the sheriff's son.
Mm-hmm.
And for Troy, he doesn't know what he wants to do. And that's sort of the exact opposite of Lemon. And so I liked the idea of having those, diametrically opposed poles. And he also just loves Lemon, and he wants her to be happy, and he wants her to be successful. And I'm not going to give away the end because I think where it goes is really important for both of them. But Troy was based on a friend of mine from college. Sort of his and Darren's friendship. Darren's the third friend in this trio. Their friendship together was based on two guys I knew in college, and they were the exact kind of opposite of toxic masculinity and sort of the way that men can be friends, like close friends, in a way that's just so adorable and loving without like getting into a lot of the crap that guys get into when there is a lot of toxic masculinity in the room. And so being vulnerable was important for Troy's character, and really making sure that he had the space to explore sort of what he wanted to do and what he could do. That was so important to me in this particular character. And I think it works, opposite Lemon.
And the fact that you mentioned Darren and Troy's relationship, when we're kind of introduced to them as the reader,
yes,
you sense that there's something special there. Like just the way that they interact with each other was very endearing, but it was also like presented in a way that it felt like I was watching a movie as I was reading.
I love that.
Because it was just, it was so seamless, and you just, I, as someone who grew up watching like a ton of, teen comedies and dramas and all of that good stuff, like you always had like that one bromance that was just really, really special. And I absolutely, they really jumped off the page for me right from the get-go.
I love that.
And so again, well done. And thank you for presenting that in a story, because I think that you're right. Like a lot of the time we're presented with relationships that maybe they're a bit too much, or they're trying to compensate for something.
For sure.
So I think that it was very, very special. Yeah. And I want to do a quick time check because, as always, like our 30 minutes fly by, and poor JC, I think, has succumbed. He come to either a cryptid in his area, or his poor internet is having trouble. But I wanted to quickly kind of pivot to our wonderful audience members who have chimed in during the broadcast. We have Farmhouse Reader, DHB, Sir Reads a Lot, and Susan all saying hello. And one thing that I would actually be interested in learning from our viewers is if you guys know if you have an area cryptid that is like a legend that you've heard of or along those lines. So feel free to put that in the chat if you do. I'm trying to think. I live out on Long Island in New York, and
there is one.
Where is it? Because I need to go on a hunt for it.
So I could not tell you exactly, but there is apparently a lake that has a white lady.
Ooh.
Which I don't know if you would consider her a true cryptid. She's kind of a little bit like Spring-Heeled Jack in that way. But yes, you absolutely do have one. A friend of mine was talking to me about it the other day, and he's like, I drive past it all the time. And apparently she used to basically kill off a guy once in a while.
Ooh.
See, one that has a body count attached to it.
There we go. I'm gonna Google Long Island Lake. And that'll come up in my search history with a lot of questions. Long Island Lake, sure. White lady. All right. We have Susan chiming in saying Bigfoot sightings in Ohio. I feel like we haven't touched on Bigfoot. Like I from here in the States, is he like the reigning cryptid, or is there somebody else that like takes that title?
Well, I mean, for sure Bigfoot is everywhere, right? And almost every part of the country has its own version of Bigfoot, whether they call it Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or something else. it's really interesting to see the differences, like geographically. Sometimes they have different things about them, but mostly they're all the same. They just choose to think their particular cryptid is the special one.
Gotcha. And we have Farmhouse Reader asking, and I'm sure she's asking you to tap into your extensive knowledge of, do you know if there are any monsters in Lake St. George in Liberty, Maine? Or maybe in like I'm trying to think.
I know for a fact there is one in Maine, and
Okay.
I can't remember the name of it. Poop. It's going to drive me nuts that it's escaping me, but there is one.
You could, if you think about it, post show, send me an email and we'll post about it, because I would be curious. I grew up in Maine, so I would be curious to know who is stomping around those woods up there.
Yeah. There is not a state in the U.S. that doesn't have at least one cryptid. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's such like a fun, cool field that you have just immersed yourself in, and it's so cool that you have woven it so amazingly into your writing.
It's been a fun time to do all that kind of research and travel.
Do you have plans for another cryptid like story, or any future stories that we have to look forward to, or are we just gearing up for the one that that releases next week?
It's not particularly cryptid related, but it is in some ways creature related. My current sort of obsession and fascination is non-corruptible saints.
Oh,
or incorruptible saints. I'm not Catholic, but I love the idea of this. They are saints and people who are considered holy, who have been buried, and when they dig them up, they just haven't rotted. And so I have been able to visit somewhere along the line of 7 incorruptible saints.
Oh, wow.
My favorite of which is Saint Catherine, I believe it is, of Bologna in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And she is unbelievable looking. You go in this, you have to buzz yourself in. You go in this church, you buzz yourself in this little side door, and you go in, and it's this little room, and there are bone relics mounted on the wall, and in this glass cage right front and center on a golden throne sits Saint Catherine of Bologna.
Oh, wow.
And her habit is pristine, which always makes me wonder what the process is and whose job it is of keeping her pristine. Her skin, she was a white woman when she died in, I think, like the 13 or 1400s. Today, her skin is pretty dark, apparently because at some point, for a lot of years, of course, she was lit by candlelight. And so the smoke not damaged, but like made her skin darker. And there are saints like her everywhere. I've seen saints in Venice, Italy, in Rome. I forget where else, but they're everywhere, and I enjoy it, and it's definitely inspirational, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I can just like see like a Dan Brown type book coming from this.
That makes sense.
So I have never heard of that before. So wow, just learning so much. Fascinating. And of course our time is flying. JC, do you have any questions that you want to ask before we begin to wrap things up on our end?
Yeah, so again, apologies, folks. It's been a crazy afternoon here in central Indiana. Nicole, congratulations in advance. You know, with release next Tuesday, folks, be ready. Hit that. Well, go pre-order it now. Do yourself a favor so you don't have to worry. Nicole, what do you got going on Celebration? Where can people find out what to do, how to kind of join you and getting the party going?
All right. So I guess to start, I'm going to be at ReaderCon in Boston, but I'm not there as a writer in any capacity. I'm just going to have fun, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm going to sort of celebrate my release. It's sort of the week after release. The first book event I've got going is July 19th in Philadelphia at the Big Blue Marble Bookstore. I could go on. I've got about a dozen events scheduled after that, in Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey.
Nice.
There might be another location, but I will not name them all because it's a lot. But you can find out all about where I'm going to be, what events are coming up at my website, which is NicoleWolverton.com. There's a whole events page, and it's really busy.
So this
Well,
is the
good.
calm. This is the calm before the storm. A little bit. Well, that's so exciting, and I can't, like, your in-person events, like getting to chat with readers and like specifically talking about this type of topic. I can imagine that there'll be very like interesting people coming out of the woodwork that you're going to be able to chat with.
That event on the 19th, which is like the first sort of book event, I'm in conversation with Stephanie Willing, who is one of the narrators of my audiobook.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
So exciting. We were hoping to get the other narrator as well, but he lives a little further away. But what makes this a particularly fun event, not that it's not fun just because she's one of the audiobook narrators, her book, she's a middle grade writer. Her debut novel came out last year, and it's also about a cryptid.
Oh, so you guys have common ground.
Yeah. So
Fabulous.
I think it'll be a great event. I'm really excited about it.
Well, we're excited that you could spend time with us today, Nicole. As always, time flies by here on the Bookish Moment. This was absolutely delightful. I learned so much, but I had so much fun, and that's like the best type of learning. And we have some comments popping up in our chat. One from Susan that says, Nicole, I'm not usually into horror, but the way that you describe the book, she wants to check it out. So thank you for being here. And we have Farmhouse Reader saying, I'll be pre-ordering for sure. So that's always a fabulous thing that you can do for our wonderful authors here. So thank you to our audience members for those kind words and for being here with us. Nicole, again, this was so fabulous. Thank you. We're wishing you the absolute best of luck on once release date comes around. Again, A Misfortune of Lake Monsters is out July 2nd, right around the corner. And oh gosh, it's so fun. And I hope one day, perfect movie, like perfect, like adaptation.
Dare to dream.
So that's, so I'm so excited for what's to come for you. But again, thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me. And
to our viewers, thank you for being bookish with us today. We have one more show this month on the Bookish Hour on this Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are joined by cozy mystery author Jan Franklin to sign us off for the year before we go on hiatus, but have no fear, we will be back with many, many shows in the fall. So we hope that you'll join us for our send-off on Thursday. But for our Bookish Moment, folks, we thank you for being here. We'll see you. We'll see you next season. But until then, you guys, stay bookish. Have a good one. Bye-bye.